Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Let's get started with our hosts, Linda McKissack and Dana Gentry.
So after Dr. Ryan talked, you and Jimmy did your amazing wealth building presentation. And I mean, so many people had so many takeaways, but it was so funny because you said something at the end that wasn't even about the wealth building thing, but that was probably my greatest takeaway. And it was and I don't think I've ever even heard you say this before, but you said about the sign that you have that says, pray hard and move your feet.
Yeah.
I love that. Like, I saved it in my phone already. I'm like, that is the best thing, because I sometimes have issue with people that, are like, just like, they just think that God's going to just like give you all that, like drop it all down, or like give everything to you without actually doing anything. And so when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's it.
Yeah. Well, and I think the reason too is because as Christians, I don't think we talk about this enough, but we don't talk about the questions that we have or the feelings that we have. That's why I love your pastor, because we can actually get up and ask him a question that you go, I'm going to go ahead and ask this. And then half the room goes, I'm so glad to ask that, So I feel like we need more space to do that, because I think as a Christian, we've always been confused about whether, are we just supposed to pray and that's supposed to be enough? Or are we supposed to pray and move our feet at the same time? And so I just think, I've adopted the philosophy that I believe God's blessing and hand is in all of this.
Yeah.
And so I don't believe I could do any of it without him. I believe he's given me gifts, but it's up to me to use those gifts and use them in a way to serve other people or do whatever.
Yeah.
And I got to move my feet to do that. So that's why I have that sign, is because for the longest time, as Christians, we have these thoughts and we're afraid to ask anybody about them. And I think we all as Christians need to be better about, hey, I'm just kind of wondering this. Have you ever wondered this yourself? And here, yeah, me too. And when I really love it is when the pastor says, oh yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh God, if you're I am so screwed, because you're like, you got to be at least 2 or 3 rings ahead of me up there. And I remember the same thing when we had an 80-year-old couple in our home group. And I thought, oh, thank God we got an 80-year-old couple. There's surely to God they've got this crap out. And I asked them something. They're like, oh, Lord, no, we don't know. I'm like, what? What? Wait a minute. This is not comforting at all. By 80, I'm still not going to know some of this stuff. This is bad.
Oh my gosh. Well, I already said, like, I made one of my action items. I don't know who made that saying on that sign, but I'm having like little magnets and little bookmarks made with it on there that I'm going to start keeping and giving out to people.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I used to have one time that I've never been able to find again also, that says, because, you and I are always trying to get people to take bigger opportunities.
Yep.
And sometimes they just don't and won't. And there was a magnet, and I wish I had I'd have bought 100 of them, that said, don't worry about missing an opportunity. Somebody right behind you will take advantage of it. I'm like,
totally.
I need a lot of those.
Yeah, so true. But I will say the other thing I loved so much that and actually another funny story, when me and you afterwards, I think maybe after dinner, we were talking about, I've laughed so hard over this. We're talking about shopping, and you looked at me and said, do you ever just feel disgusted with yourself after you shop?
Well, because, some women shop every week. I don't shop every week. You don't shop every week. Jimmy would differ with that about Amazon, but that doesn't qualify. That
doesn't count. Yeah.
That is necessities
that
I used to go to the grocery store for, or run over to the sporting goods store for, or whatever. But when I shop, I actually power shop.
Yeah.
And that gets disgusting sometimes. You get disgusted sometimes too.
But my response to you is yes, and I felt that way. I feel that way every time I hear you and Jimmy do the wealth building talk. I'm like, I'm just disgusted. No, not really. But I thought the one biggest takeaway that I had from that is I do get stuck on the number. And you said, don't get stuck on the freedom number. Just pick one, because it's always going to change and it'll move. And I thought, okay, I just needed to hear that again, because I feel like I get stuck on it because I never know, and it's always changing. And sometimes we're in a great market and sometimes we're in a crappy market. And it's like, I feel like it changes all the time. So that was a really good aha for me.
Yeah. One thing we forgot to say about, I don't know who said this. Was it Ryan or somebody that talked about the body fat percentage?
Oh, oh no, that was Matt. That was
Matt.
that was Matt
Yeah.
King. That was really good too.
Yeah, he said you were the body fat percentage of the 5 people you hang out, which, by the way, I'd always heard about the money.
Yeah.
But I then immediately texted Dana and said, you're going to have to lose some body fat for both of us because I'm not able to do it for some reason. So you're going to have to do some extra so that I can hang out together.
Yeah, that was a really good reminder though. I mean, he said to write down the 5 people that are closest to you. And I think too, like I was thinking, I think you almost need to do that on like a personal friend, family, and then also on a business side. But he said the 5 people around you that you spend the most time with, and write down their name, then write down their income that you guess, and then write down their body percent fat. And he said because that's your tribe. I mean, that's the power of the people that you're around. And I told Adam too, one of the things I thought about when he said that was, I think about like how much do those people go to stuff like this, and like how much are they learning and growing, and because that's just as important to me as even the money and the body percent fat.
One of the things, and I always talk about my formula. I love my formula about being valid to people. Yep. What I've learned is the more stuff I go to, the more I can throw or lob something into a conversation that becomes interesting to someone.
So true.
You know what I'm saying? And if you're not interesting to someone, then they're not going to want to give you time to build a relationship. But I was thinking when they said that, you could actually list all the things that are important to you. If a great marriage is important to you, who has a great marriage? And are you spending any time with those couples? Or are you spending time with couples who cheat on each other and all those things, Well, so I think you could do that with any.
Oh, sorry.
Say that again.
No, I
just said you could do that in any area.
Yeah, sorry, it's on a little bit of a delay. I think I interrupted you. I totally agree. I think you could do that with all the areas, and I like what he said. He said then add them all up and then divide it by 5, and I guarantee you are close to all of them by just a few percentages, whether it's on the income or whether it was on the body percent fat or whatever it was. And he said it's because and I love that he gave the something else that he said that was great was he's the one that talked about the proximity as power, like getting close to people, just being in the proximity, and then paying for proximity as a hack, like paying to get to things, paying to get around coaches or mentors or some of these great speakers. But I forgot, this was one of the Addison and Amelia, this is one of the kids' ahas that they said that it was so good when he said the only bird that attacks an eagle is a crow, and they actually attach themselves to their back, and the eagle can't get them off, but the only way to get them off is the eagle flies higher until the crow can't stand the altitude and it loses oxygen. And so he said that's what we have to do with our life, like continue to just fly higher, and proximity is power, like getting around those people. And I thought, man, that's just such a great reminder.
And, I think of some amazing people that, Dana, I had the opportunity early on to do that with, and I didn't do it. Yeah. And now they're like untouchable, or like it's 200 grand or 150 grand to spend any time with them. And I'm thinking, Dad gummit, Linda, when you feel that, well, who was it that said that about, well, this was about generosity, but you could do the same thing with anything else. Don't ignore that urge of when you have it for generosity. But honestly, there's an urge that also comes when you're in a moment that you have an opportunity, and you might think, oh, that's too much money. But your urge is telling you should do it. It's different. That same thing has happened to me several times. One of them was, what's the guy that's so famous on ClickFunnels? I was in a mastermind group with him. Yes. Am I not sick today that I didn't look up and go, God, Russell Brunson, whatever he is, I'm paying it and going to get in that first group.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. Yes. I bet Press is sick over that one too.
Yes, he is, because he wants to write the check.
Yeah, that was, you're thinking about when, Pastor Josh Surratt said they have a motto in their house: and never resist a generous impulse. But yeah, you can do that you could put that towards everything.
It's funny, that night at dinner, I had one of those, and I've had them before. And it's funny because this guy came up to us when we were parking that night for dinner. We were going to dinner with Adele and Rich, and we were parking. He came up to us, and he was the sweetest, godliest guy. And I'd already given one homeless person some money for some pants earlier. So I was feeling like, okay, I kind of did my thing, and Jimmy just hates it when I do that because he feels like a lot of times they're just scamming. And I'm like, but this was a woman and her pants were ripped. And I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't want to be walking around with ripped pants. Anyway, I did it. I don't even think the urge was there. I just did it. But anyway, later this guy comes up to us as we're parking, and he helps us figure out how to do the stupid text thing and all. It tells us which one doesn't work. And he's just real super helpful. And you can tell he's godly, and he's just precious. But he's got this long spiel, and I don't want to stay and listen to it because I'm ready. Got reservations about to be given away. So Jimmy and I keep walking, and Rich doesn't have no problem telling him no. So he talks with him and tells him no. But when I'm in the restaurant, Adele and I both ordered a pizza. Well, they're huge. So I took her leftover pizza. I took my leftover pizza, slid him a little bit of money in the box. And I thought, if he's still out there, I'm going to give this to him. I feel like that's the right thing. What's weird is, Dana, when I'm walking out the door, he's walking by on his bicycle. And I said, hey, sir, do you like pizza? And these young girls are watching. And I said, hey, sir, do you like pizza? And he said, oh, I love pizza. And I said, well, here, this is for you. God bless you. Because I could tell he told us God bless you, even though we didn't listen to his spiel about washing our car with something. I don't know, with spray bottle or something. But I thought, I need to pay more attention to when I have those, because you get a little tap and it.
Yeah.
And I don't think, once it's like within seconds, you miss it if you're not paying attention. So I love that he said, pay attention to those generosity urges that you get.
That was one of my biggest takeaways from the event when he said that. And for me, it was like, okay, how much do it more? Like, I need to slow down so that I can feel and hear those and be able to, not pass up on the nudge when you get it to do something. Which makes me think of another funny story. When one time we were traveling back to Kentucky, and Addison and Amelia were with us, and there was this kid, and he was probably a teenager, and he was homeless. He was sleeping like in a sleeping bag over. We'd stopped at McDonald's or Wendy's or somewhere, but he was a big boy. I mean, like a really big boy. And he was outside, and it was cold, and he was in a sleeping bag, and he'd had you could tell he had these little bags around him. And so I said, to Addison and Amelia, hey, take my card and go in and get him some food, and then I want you guys to take it over there to him. And they came out with 1 4-pack of chicken nuggets. Like,
oh my God.
They're like, well, you didn't tell us what to get. I'm like, guys, he weighs like probably 250 pounds, and he's over on this side. And I'm like, he needed probably more than 4 chicken nuggets. And Millie's like, well, I'll go back in and get him a cheeseburger then. I'm like, oh my gosh. But yes. So what did you have next? Did you have anything else that you thought you were going to put into action immediately?
Well, it's interesting because sometimes I think the action comes, like even like when me and you and Jimmy and Adam were at dinner, I immediately reached out to his what did he call that, CMO?
Yeah.
Immediately did that. Immediately took action on the marketing girl, so we can talk a little bit about her stuff, because I immediately knew that this is an area. So one of the things I always ask myself, is this an area that you've written down before? And if it's an area that I've written down before, I'm not going to leave there without taking some kind of action. Let's talk a little bit about some of her tips, and then I'll kind of talk about what I did.
Yep. So her name's Helen Hall Leland. She just got married, so I have to remember her new last name. She's the founder and creator of a company called Blender Bombs. She happens to be Adam and I's next door neighbor, and she's very passionate about health and nutrition. And she created these little smoothie bombs that you just drop into a smoothie a day, and it has all the nutrients and all kinds of things that you need, and they're great. She's got them in Whole Foods and Costco and all these other places, and she's got a couple smoothie bars. But what she talked about is on the marketing and branding front, and she gave really clear strategies and lots of really great ideas. But the gist of it is, she's building a community, and she has these loyal followers, and she raised like over $3 million crowdfunding just from her Instagram. And I think she's got like 90 something thousand followers. So not millions, but she said it's because of the community that she's created and the followers that she has. And she said, I loved this thing that she opened with. She said 2 things. One, people talk to the camera like they're talking to an audience, and really they should be talking to the camera like they're talking to their friend, like when you're doing videos on Instagram. And then she said most businesses are not succeeding because they're not humanizing their business on social media. And it has to be humanized. So those were like some of the big things. And then she gave all kinds of good strategies, but she built it around Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand, who we've talked about before.
Yeah. And I feel like we even got like a workbook before that book even came out or something.
Yes.
Yeah, I loved hers because one of the things I always kind of start thinking of questions afterwards. And again, we're going to try to have her on the podcast too, because you and I thought of other questions. But one of the things that you would automatically think, because she's been in Whole Foods and she's somewhere else in Walmart or wherever else she is,
Yep.
that, oh man, that's what I got to do. I got to do something big. And the truth is, she said those were profit sucks.
Yeah, she did.
Especially Whole Foods. So I think sometimes we got to hear the whole story. You know what I mean? And Jim and I were talking later, and we're like, I wonder how in the world she figured out the manufacturing. But here's the thing I know, if you've got an idea and it's a burning passion for you, you'll figure out the how. You know what I mean? Or you'll find somebody who knows the how. You just don't want to get stuck in that area. But it was very clear that the thing that you thought would have made her super successful, two things. One, I don't think she was very passionate about that path. And then number two, it wasn't the most profitable.
No. Yeah. Yeah, that was huge. I mean, she said she makes more money from her influencer brands that she has on social media than she did from actually going into Whole Foods, Costco, and wherever else, Walmart or wherever else it was, which was interesting to me. But you can see that you're right, Linda. I do think she is passionate about that side of it too.
Yeah. And I think we'll eventually move to a world where there's some way that everybody gets paid for. I mean, if I believe something, I'm probably one of the, not, I mean, I'm definitely probably not the top, but I'm one of the top people for strategic coach because I believe in it so much.
Yes.
So if you believe, and same thing with profit share and same thing with different things. So I believe that ultimately we'll need to get to a time where people get compensated for their ability to attract people to things, and you'll have to decipher between who's authentic about it and who's just selling you on something.
Totally agree.
But so with her, one of the things I did is, this is not the first time I've been hit with social media and doing a better job and all of those things, and I haven't done anything with it. So I immediately had a question. You know how when Adam is always doing his on the golf cart, I'm like, okay, I was getting stuck on how in the world is he doing that? He ain't holding that camera out in front of him, is he? I mean, literally, that's the piece that would get me stuck. So I went up to Tyler and said, okay, you got to answer this question for me, because sometimes when you have a question about something, it will stop you and you don't do anything else. So I said, in the world of people, when they're doing some of that stuff, how do they do that without having a camera crew around them? So he showed me this little gadget that you can use, right? Okay, so that helped me. Gimbal, yes. So I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. And then the next thing was, I went to somebody who would have the answers and said, here's kind of where I'm stuck. What would you do if you were me? So I started taking action and moving forward on something that had been coming up to me over and over and over again. So I would say, ask yourself that. How many times have you been in somewhere and you wrote down in your notes you needed to do something with this, or you knew you needed to do something with it? What's the first plan of action you can do before you ever even leave that event?
Yeah.
Who can you go ask a question to? Can you make an appointment? What can you do? Okay, so who else was there any last? We'll wrap up with one last idea.
Yeah, because I think we might have to do a whole nother one about John Maxwell. But I will say one of the last big ones. Gosh, Simon did a really great job, especially just overcoming adversity and all that. I thought his was so good. He said something that I thought was great. He said, if you have 10 people that are 80% of you, you actually have 800% of you out there, and that's better than nothing. So stop trying to find that was good. So stop trying to find the you, that's 100% you. If you had 10 of them that are 80%, then that's more than not. And I loved what he said about that. And then the other thing I loved that he said, and this was kind of unfortunate, but I think it's so true. He said, few people are going to believe in you. So
yeah,
So you have to believe in yourself, and then get around the couple people that really do believe in you and that are going to be your big supporters, because the normal person, when someone starts to succeed, or whatever, they're not going to believe in them. So I thought he was great. And then the last thing I loved was I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. But I loved the Make-A-Wish stuff. I mean, we raised $50,000 in an hour, I guess, if even that. Which each kid, there's 400 kids waiting in South Carolina for a wish right now. And I didn't realize this, Linda, but Sarah Weber that works with me, her fiance Connor, he was a Make-A-Wish kid. He had cancer when he was a child, and he got Make-A-Wish. Yeah. And she was like, do you not remember that? And I was like, man, if you told me, I forgot, or I didn't know. But I love when I think Matt O'Neill might have said, every time you give or you do something like that, you glow. And I thought, that's so good. But it just made me think about, like, everybody has something that they're passionate about. Like, you have your Salvation Army, and I'm really passionate about, like, recovery and addiction and stuff. And I think, like, just, it made me think about, and Josh Surratt said, when you're giving and the generosity, like, yes, it's about money, but don't forget your time. And I just thought it just a really good reminder of, like, okay, as the industry and the market and, quite frankly, the world tends to get harder every month and every year, I just was thinking, like, what the one thing I wrote down to take action on is for next year when I'm planning my calendar is to get back into the time tithing too. And really thinking about how I can go and make a difference, not just with money, because we do that and we can always do more of that, but with my time too.
And one of the things that we've always done that I did because we didn't have the time to do anything was our house. Matter of fact, we couldn't go home this weekend because a women's church group was using our house from Friday to Sunday. So that made me, because sometimes I forget about those things, and I'm like, we got to tithe more, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, I'm like, oh, everything adds up. Whatever God's blessed you with, those are the things you need to use. And so we use our ranch sometimes, we use our own house sometimes. So if it's not money you have right now, it could be your time, it could be something you have. I've just noticed that there's always a need for something. And so, sometimes, like, it might be, if a missionary comes into town, they need a car to drive around while they're here. So kind of think out of the box if you don't have money, and start tithing with other gifts or blessings that you have.
Yep. Love that. Totally agree. I thought that was such a good one.
Okay. Good
awesome.
deal. All right. Well, Dana, awesome. We've got so much more. I think we could probably do at least another video on everything that a podcast on everything we've learned, because there was so much great content there. So again, if you haven't gotten
another one for John on John Maxwell, and especially what you learned next week too. We can do that too.
Yeah, we'll double up on what we learned from John and then what I learned from John this next week. So remember, if you have not hit the subscribe button, please go ahead and hit that button right now. And the greatest compliment you can give Dana and I is, number one, pass this podcast along to anyone that you think that would benefit from listening. And number two, a great review. So Dana, I guess I'll see you. I don't know when, but see you next week.
Be sure to subscribe for more business strategies and tactics to inspire you to live an abundant real estate life. Don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you the best content. Find this and other valuable information at everythinglifeandrealestate.com.